Next is Mike Buck.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for hosting this event. My name is Mike Buck, and I want to be your next state school superintendent. I'm really running on a platform of the 3 C's: character, my personal character, and how I've lived my life, but also the character that we have to develop in our young people. I'm running on credentials, and mine will closely mirror what Mr. Ford just had to share. This is my 31st year in education. I've served at every level. I've been an elementary principal, I've been a high school principal, virtually every role in the central office, I've filled that. For the past 3 years, I've had the pleasure of serving at the Georgia Department of Education as the Chief Academic Officer, and lastly, as the Chief of Staff. I believe that one of the best single predictors of future success is past performance, and I welcome people to check my lifelong record of success at every one of those levels. I'm also committed to our young people, to every single young person being successful. I've got 3 school-aged children. They're not off the payroll yet. I know you're looking at this old man and thinking, how does he have school-aged children? That's another story. I adopted twin girls from China. They are now 10. Tomorrow is their gotcha day. That's the day we celebrate like a birthday. They came into my life. Shortly after that, we adopted my son. I live the standards with homework every day. You hear me? Nobody's going to work harder than somebody that's got children in the system, so I walk the walk. I'm also convinced that we have got to be good with our academic standards, but there's a curriculum of life that gets lost in the shuffle. We're going to get held accountable for the standards, and that's okay. We should be. But the curriculum of life, through the boys and girls who have been entrusted to our care, become the kind of people we want living in our neighborhoods, taking care of us when we're older, dating our sons and daughters. We can do things to help that curriculum of life. Thank you very much. I look forward to serving you.
Thank you. Next is Richard Woods.
Okay, thank you. Again, education is personal, and it's personal because it's dealing with your kids. Now tonight, I just briefly want to share in summary, a 4-point plan in which I believe will help bring Georgia where it needs to be educationally. First of all, my first solution is that we need to be child-focused. I mean, the children are, our most valued, entity here. The group that we have, our kids, are important. And because they are important, what we need to do is we need to personalize education and not standardize education. One size fits all does not work. We know that. And so in doing so, what we do, we have to expand our course offerings, our graduation options for our kids, across the board to give them that opportunity to succeed. Also in doing so, we must look at our teachers. They're the ones that directly have an impact on our students. They're the ones that work with our students. So we need to give them the adequate time to teach, cut out some of the paperwork, the redundancy of data collecting and testing so that they can address our kids. Secondly, we need to look at, concentrate on the classroom by giving our kids a solid foundation based on reading, writing, and math by the time they leave, 5th grade, that we will provide them with the foundation needed to succeed in life. Thirdly, common sense over common core. One of the things that I look at, and has been part of my platform from day one, we have to make sure that we do not outsource Georgia education. It is not for sale. That is a point that we cannot negotiate with. And lastly, as we look at this, we need to make sure that we are cost effective. As we do so, that means unfunded mandates, we need to stop because you at the local level are the ones that have to pay for it. And with that, with unfunded mandates, if we can't afford it, we don't need it. And that's simple how I run my business. It's very simple and plain. Also we need to have a complete audit of the Department of Education. Yes, education is important to you. It is personal, but it is also personal to me. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question that I have, and we'll go ahead and get this out of the way right away, is what are your thoughts on Common Core? Are you for or against it, and why?
Thank you. I strongly support the standards that we are currently teaching in public schools in Georgia. But at the end of the day, my opinion is not the most important opinion. The opinion of our teachers, and we've surveyed our teachers across this state. Over 11,000 teachers responded. 70 to 75% of our teachers are in favor or strongly in favor of the standards we're teaching. They're not perfect. They're good standards, but they're not perfect. And I am very open to an open, transparent, periodic review of the standards to make sure that we get it right. But you know what? We already do that. We already have a process in place where we put the standards before the public. We allow people to weigh in. Those standards get gone over multiple times as they're developed before they become final. And I'm for that. I want to get it right. I believe we're close. We're not there, but we're going to use the review process and get it from the teachers, those closest to the kids in the classroom. I was fortunate enough to attend the hearing last week where approximately 60 people spoke. The vast majority of them spoke on behalf of the standards. But let me tell you who some of those organizations were. It was representatives from the military. There was a rear admiral who represented 400 admirals and generals. I have personally met with the student organization, the children of military families, and heard the horror stories of what happens when they have to transfer. The very men and women who are protecting our rights to be in this room having this discussion, those are the children who suffer the most if we're all over the board. So they're not perfect, but they're very good. Had lunch today with a school board member, small district, 3,000 students. He said, if you change the standards, it will cost our district $500,000 in staff development and everything that we'll have to do. Our districts can't afford it. It's not best for teachers, kids.
Richard?
Yeah, in 2010, I was one of the Republican candidates, and one part of my platform at that point was I was against race to the top. I was against the Common Core. You know, one of the things I think we have to understand to start off with, that we as in Georgia, is that if we're going to improve education, we have to control education. And that means that, first of all, we need to follow the Constitution. You know, education is not a enumerated power given in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It is something that is very specific in Article 8 of our Georgia Constitution, which basically gives, really control at the local level. So I think, we need to begin at that point just to follow the Constitution. Amazing what happens when you follow the rule of law and the way things that were set up with our founding fathers. The standards themselves, again, to be able to address everything, we need to make sure that we own the copyright. We need to make sure that we own everything about what goes on in Georgia education as far as our standards are concerned. Because each child is different. As I said before, we need to personalize education and not standardize education. So by doing so, and controlling education and again rejecting, the notion that, this is a blanket, we need to, go back, look at the standards, look at everything thoroughly. We need to also do a better job of implementation. Now, you've heard there are a lot of teachers who are, for or perhaps with this, but one of the very critical things we've looked at is that implementation has been horrible. It was horrible under No Child Left Behind. So we are chasing down the same road that we are just, just came out of. So I think if history, if we do not pay attention, we will repeat it. Well, I can let you know for certain that as an individual who implemented No Child Left Behind, who has seen what we are doing here with Race to the Top, we are repeating history all over. And it will not serve our education, it will not serve our kids, it will not serve our teachers. So, let's look at this, make sure that whatever we adopt is sound. We could have done better, but we chose not to. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, what do you see as Georgia's #1 educational challenge?
Thank you, and I'll concur that the grad rate is problematic for us. Young people that do not graduate high school just have far worse outcomes overall. We have got to put things in place to assist these young people. I'll tell you there are two issues that contribute to the issue of lack of graduation, and we've got to be cognizant of it, and we've got to do something about it. I've always said that I create or eliminate 90% of my headaches with who I hire. We have got to work on setting up a system where we continue to attract the best and brightest to our field, that we don't treat our educators as second-class citizens, that we get them the support that they need. Because the single most important variable, once that child hits the classroom door, on how successful they're going to be, how far they're going to move, is the skill set of that classroom teacher. We want the best and brightest to come into the field, and quite frankly, with what's happened to our educators, it's not as appealing as it once was, even though the educators I know are absolutely passionate about their young people. The second part that we're talking about with a poor graduation rate is apathy, or students who do not see the relevance of what they are doing. We have got to help them find their passion. Our Pathways initiative that allows young people to have real world experiences where they mentor with people in the world of work. These are the things that will help us help the young people find their passion. We don't lose young people because of a lack of aptitude. We lose the young people because they don't see the relevance of what they're doing. We have got to help them find that relevance so they'll stick with us and continue throughout the educational system. That will help us, and we've got to treat our teachers with more respect.
Again, this is a very easy question for, an educator and somebody that has seen our kids, at the high school level as a social studies teacher, but also work with them at the elementary and pre-K level. It's literacy. If we can teach our kids to read, we will open up the doors of opportunity. And that's what we need to really focus on. For myself as a high school teacher, when it came time to test, my kids knew facts. They knew figures. That was never the issue. It was their ability to read and comprehend. And lo and behold, you think about all the tests we give in education, whether it's math, science, social studies, whatever, guess what you have to do? You have to be able to read. And so that's where we have to address the problem. If we are going to improve education, we have to make sure that our kids are literate. One of the things I've looked at that within some law enforcement agencies, they look at the literacy level or the literate level at 3rd grade. At that point, they begin to determine how many beds they're going to need in their correction facilities. Georgia right now, I think according to the first, foundations, FVRST, we graduate and have an average literacy level at about 8 or grade 8.5. So we need improvement there. That's something we have. My wife, who is a reading recovery teacher, says, Richard, the best thing that parents can do is, again, take a book and read 5 minutes a night. And so that's why I've committed that even before we get into pre-K, that we reach out to nonprofit groups such as the First Foundation, such as Dr. Ben Carson's, fund as well, our Lions Club, our Rotary Club. Let's put books in the hands of our kids, prior to getting into education. If our parents will sit down and read, we will increase their vocabulary, we'll increase their sentence structure, we will make a difference. That is where we attack it. We address it at the root, and again, we do it by addressing the needs of the kids. Thank you.
Our next question will start with Cheryl. What will you do to organize the Department of Education to deliver staff development more effectively to teachers?
Thank you, Alan. And professional learning is absolutely critical in my experience. Student achievement tends to trail professional learning. You've got to have high quality professional learning, and you will see. If you focus on it, you'll see the needle start moving in professional learning. You talk about how are we going to do that. First thing we have to give our teachers is the time to do so. 2/3 of the districts in our state are operating on less than 180 days that are required by state law because of the funding issues. The professional learning days were the first to go. We don't have the time, so we've got to find a way to provide our teachers the time. How do you do that? Well, we've got to use the RESAs, the Regional Educational Service Agencies. They are our best friend. They've got talent. They are close to the local districts, and they can help get the professional learning out there. So we have to support them, and we've got to have a symbiotic, hand-in-glove relationship where we are working together to help our teachers do a better job teaching. We've got to use the talent that we have in the state of Georgia in our teaching corps. There's plenty of talent out there. We can utilize the best practices across the state. We can archive those lessons. We can use GPB, and we have, to archive the lessons so that 3rd grade teachers can view it on their own time. The administrators can say, hey, let's look at questioning technique, for example. Those teachers can get together at their own convenience, look at the lesson, and then get together and talk about it. But we've got to utilize webinars. We've got to use archived professional learning activities, and we've got to use the talent we've got across the state in the teaching profession through the RESAs. Those teachers learn best from teachers, and they believe it when teachers are sharing the successes that they've got. We've got to get best practices from across the state and make them available to all of our teachers.
Again, as an individual who was in charge of staff development, I can, and has seen some of the things that's coming out of DOE, I can assure you that most of the stuff that I've seen, if you suffer from insomnia, it's a good cure. Because, one of the things we look at it as far as education is concerned, for a teacher. And it has to be purposeful, it has to be meaningful, it has to be sensible. It has to be relevant as far as what we use. And so many times in education, what we find out is that, it's highly faddish. Today's, fad is yesterday's news. And so we have to make sure that when we are planning for, staff development, that it's long-term. It is something that it will actually have relevance, as far as improving our education, improving the craft that we have. And part of the problem that we have up there is that, you kind of go back to marketing. Anytime you have a delivery system, you make sure that, that it's proven and tested. You field test it before you actually send it out to the customer base. And there's a reason, why businesses do that. So that they can show relevance, so they can make sure that it's meaningful, that it is sensible. So I think that when we look at staff development, yes, we have lots of delivery systems, but, as a teacher, if it doesn't meet a need, if it's something where I'm just going to sit for hours and hours and just be completely bored and waste my time, then, we don't need it. And there's a lot of that out there. So we need to make sure whatever we offer has been proven, it has been tested, and it again has been seen by the people that are actually going to use it. Let's have some marketing up front. Let's make sure that it is sound. Make sure that it does not put us to sleep while we're sitting there watching it. So, we can do some things, add some business to it, make it smarter, make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. The question reads, and this is not me reading this, I do not have 5 children. I probably have less hair than I do now. I have 5 children, and over the course of their education, I have chosen homeschooling, private school, and public education. What have you chosen for your children, and why?
Absolutely. And amen. My 3 children are in public school. I'm a graduate of public school. I believe in it, I live it, I breathe it. I want my children to have those experiences that they're only going to get in public school. I really believe in this country we have 3 great entities that can turn the course of our country: the home, the church, and the school in public education. Alabama, it's 93% of our children are going to attend public school. It is the real world. There are experiences that you are just not going to get in other locations. You've got to learn to deal with other groups. I want to tell you one quick story about one of my proudest moments as a high school principal at Rome High School and Rome City Schools. If you go into most schools and kids get to choose where they sit, you go and watch at lunch, and what do kids do? They self-segregate. It happens. You will see this pocket of kids, or this pocket of kids, or this pocket of kids. We work very hard on the culture within our school to make sure that all of our kids got to know each other. Fast forward 4 years, I was a rookie high school principal. 4 years later, it was my group of graduates. We had senior day. They got to get their yearbooks first. I got them pizza. I even looked the other way if they chose to go home a little early on that senior day. But when I looked out across that practice football field, I didn't see a self-segregated group of young people. I saw high school seniors who were memorializing a very important time in their lives. They had learned lessons there that they just flat wouldn't learn in many other settings.
Thank you. Richard?
Well, I guess for myself, I do not have children. My wife and I were not able to have children. And so, the kids that I taught and worked with were my children. I can honestly say that I was, very pleased to be a part of their lives and have an impact in their lives. But if I did have children, and I think as any parent, I would send my child to the school that I thought was best for them, where they would, succeed. That would give them the best opportunity to succeed. Whether that meant homeschool, whether it meant private school, whether it meant public school. We as parents, or you as parents, you want the best. And that's when I see that when, as an individual that has worked in public education, I have also, had an opportunity to teach, kids who have been at private school and at home school. And the one common denominator is that the parents have always wanted the best. That's all they want. And so for us in public education, for me as a teacher, for me as an educator, that's what I sought to provide. Is that when, I made the commitment, as a teacher, I said I would never forget what it's like to be a classroom teacher, or to be a student. As an administrator, I said I would never forget what it's like to be, a classroom teacher. But the pledge I made to my parents is that when they had a child, when whatever school I was at, that once their child entered that door, they became my child. And that is what we in public education are all about. It is what we should be about. Is that making, your family, an extension to our family. And if we do so, we can gain your trust, we can gain your business. But the bottom line is that you are parents, and you have to make that decision. And I respect that decision no matter what you do. But for any child that attends public education, I will make sure and work to make sure it is the school of choice. Thank you very much.
Georgia has 3 ways to complete high school: a diploma, a certificate, and a special education diploma. Do you support adding a 4th option, a technical education diploma? Why or why not?
Now, I think we have enough different diplomas. What we have to do is ensure that we help the young people find their passion in one of those 3 avenues. And I want to echo some earlier comments about the graduation rate and why we rank where we do. So many states have much lower expectations for what their graduates have to have in the way, for example, math. In Georgia, you have to have 4 maths, and that 3rd one has to be advanced algebra and trig, and it doesn't matter what your IEP says by and large. That is hurting us. If you're trying to truly compare apples to apples, it's not happening. But what we have to do is make sure that we have multiple ways for young people to find their passion. The Career Pathways Initiative, which was mandated by state law, where we have put in 100 new courses over 17 clusters with the input of business and industry throughout the state of Georgia, will allow us to develop courses that help the young people find their passion and will help turn them into graduates. I don't think we have to add another diploma to make that happen. What we have to do is do a better job with a systemic approach. Graduation rates do not live and die on the high school experience. It begins in kindergarten and it runs all the way through. So we've got to do a better job with career awareness type activities in the elementary level, career exploration type activities in the middle school, and really career development activities at the high school level. Our business and industry loves this type of approach. We ask them to tell us what we need to do because they're our end consumers. And whatever job, whether kids leave high school and go directly to work, whether they leave high school and go to technical college, whether they leave high school and go into a traditional 4-year diploma program, we've got to give them all of those options and help those young people find the passion.
Again, looking at whether it's technical college, special ed, whatever diploma selection you have, it's got to have relevance. It's got to have actually meaning. When the child actually graduates from high school, what does that diploma mean? Does it open the doors of opportunity for them to continue their education? Does it allow them to be, effective and very productive, members of a business? It will allow them to eventually become a small business owner. So I think relevance and long term, we have to look at, does the piece of paper actually mean anything? But that being said, I think that, with our schools and with our kids, we need to give them as much choice, as possible. And that means that we expand the opportunities, whether it's, looking at, expanding our STEM classwork, looking at expanding, what I used to call the vocational technical skill area, which definitely has took a hit over the many years because of a lot of remediation and really moving away from the one-size-fits-all mentality, which we had during that time of No Child Left Behind. It does have to, be focused. It does have to be looked at. I think, having partnerships with our business, would be a great plan. Looking at, apprenticeships, at the local level, expanding, opportunities with whether it's agriculture. I think, agriculture is a $70 billion business in Georgia. And so we need to do a bigger partnership and a greater partnership with our businesses. Let's put labs from our businesses right there at our school. That will give them relevance. That will give them meaning. That will give substance to our diplomas. Thank you.
A lot has been said about attracting great teachers. But what are your plans for the other 50% of the state employees, such as the support staff and the non-certified people, such as bus drivers, lunchroom attendants, janitorial, parapros? They also teach our children.
Again, coming from, I guess, a coaching background, these people are essential team members. They may not have the big highlight, they get a lot of the accolades that they definitely well deserve. For myself as an administrator, there were many a day that I had to break down and work in the elementary school and serve in the food line. And so I saw, firsthand what these people did. There were days in which I had to ride on the bus with our bus drivers, or had to watch tapes in which to see what actually went on a bus. Or there were days that I had to go down and when a teacher was sick, where a paraprofessional basically, took the job over and ran the classroom, and very efficiently. So these individuals are definitely, are worth their salt. But it does mean treating them with respect. And I think that, that begins, definitely at the site level, but also for myself as being, a next state school superintendent, it's setting the tone and it's letting them know that they are appreciated. And I think one of the ways we can look at making sure they are appreciated is probably addressing something that's very dear to them. That many of these people, they get into it just for some of the benefits, the health benefits. And what you find across the board is that the way that we have done with our health, and especially the concerns we've had, we have done these people a disservice. And so we have to ensure that what benefits we do give them, that we meet them, that we are not taking money out of their pocket where day in and day out it becomes more of a burden. That, I'm coming here making less, I'm getting less, and I have less respect. So let's look at what we are offering our specialty people in this area, treat them with respect, give them the benefits that they need, so that they can, provide and help provide for their family. Because they're there for a reason, and they're there to help us out. But any time that we have a weak link, it hurts education across the board. Thank you.
Fitz, I see what you mean. It is tough to go last. For me, it's personal and it's biblical. You follow the golden rule. You treat other people the way that you want to be treated. Every member of that faculty and staff, from the bus driver, the custodian, to the lunchroom worker, they're all vital members of the family in a given school. And they need to be given the respect and the compensation that they are due. That curriculum of life that I'm talking about, you know who teaches a lot of those lessons? Lunchroom ladies, the custodians, the secretaries. They're all teaching those lessons in life. You don't think the bus drivers hear and see a lot going on those buses and how they respond to what they see and hear? I'm telling you, they are absolutely essential to us doing the job that we need to do. And we should always, always give them the respect that they do and treat them the exact same way that we would like to be treated. It is on us to make sure that we can meet their needs. And we've got to find a way within that package to make sure that they get the benefits, because they're not doing it for the salary. I'm telling you, that benefit package is absolutely essential. And local districts have been burdened with trying to maintain the cost of escalating health insurance costs, quite frankly. So we've got to find a way to try to assist with that.
Yeah, thank you, each and every one of you for coming out tonight. Again, as I began, my message, this evening, it's personal. And, we can talk about graduation rates, we can talk about dropout rates, we can talk about, funding and things of this nature. But at the end of the day, you as a parent, you're just concerned about, did my child receive an education that will give them the opportunity to succeed in life. But one of the things I bring to this table is that for 22 years, I did work in the Irwin County school system. 14 years, I was a high school social studies teacher. 8 years in administration. I've been working as an assistant principal, K-5 curriculum director, hospital homebound, homeschool system director, pre-K principal, and middle school, high school, principal over alternative school. So I've walked and been where your kids walk each and every day. That's because I've worked in the school each and every day. And I think that as we look at what we are implementing in Georgia, we just have to make sure that our standards are making, will help us achieve their dreams and their opportunity. We have to give our teachers, once again, the opportunity to close their door and teach. And that means that we don't teach to the test, we teach to the child. It means we cut out, paperwork, data collecting, and excessive testing, so they can work with our kids day in and day out. One of the things I think we have to have a mindset, in this position is never forget what it's like to be a teacher. Never forget what it's like to be a student. Because that allows us to prioritize. And we have to make sure that when we prioritize, that we are focusing on the children. The children is all it's about. If we don't succeed with them, we don't succeed at all. So we have to make sure that our focus and emphasis is on this. I would appreciate your vote. Again, please check my campaign out at woodsforsuper.com. Thank you very much.
Mike?
You know, I'm not a politician, and after tonight, I know why. I'm an educator, and I'm a parent. And I think I want what most parents want. I want a safe and orderly school environment. When I drop my kids off in the morning, I expect to get them back in at least the same condition that I dropped them off. I'm no different than any other parent. Everybody wants a safe, orderly environment. I want a world-class educational system. Listen, I'm so competitive, it hurts. At Rome High School, if there was a Tiddlywinks competition, I wanted to be the Tiddlywinks champion of the world. I want us to lead the nation in student achievement. I want to know that my kids are going to be educated by caring adults, people dedicated to them. I think every parent wants a teacher that they know will treat their children as they do their own. And frankly, I think we've got a lot of them. Now, you've heard a lot about the sins of education in Georgia, and just because you say it and repeat it and it gets louder and you can refer to various pieces of rhetoric, doesn't necessarily make it so. I can tell you some metrics, concrete metrics, where Georgia is doing a good job. We haven't hit it out of the park. We got plenty of room to improve. But Education Week, national publication, one of the most respected out there, recently, 2013, ranked Georgia #1 in connecting early learning to K-12 education to post-secondary and the world work. #1. In 2012, real metrics, national assessments that are given across the country, the SAT, the ACT, the NAEP, reading, math, science, and advanced placement exams. You know how many states in the country went up in each of those 5 assessments? There was one that went up in every one of those statements. It was Georgia. So I'm tired of public education in Georgia taking a beating. We got room to improve. I fully acknowledge it. But if you're going to tell the story, tell the whole story.
Thank you.